Welcome. I was really exciting. So this is exciting. I got Devin here live for Inspired Build Conversations with AI Builders, and I really, really hope that Devin is really excited because I put this outfit on with a wonderful t-shirt. So I'm excited because I don't think that. Are you excited about my outfit, Devin?
Very excited and very happy to be here, Erica, and love the outfit. Especially rocking the new Dosu swag. That's only 2 weeks old. So
Only 2 weeks old. This t-shirt.
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
debuted at KubeCon.
So that's how cool I am that I got this t-shirt. I feel very special now. I didn't know that I was that special. I hope now that it's a limited edition and you will not print anymore. No. I should get it signed though. I should get like a Devin autograph on it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should have done signatures at KubeCon. That would have
You
been
should
fun.
have. Oh my goodness. Well, we'll figure that out. Unfortunately, we are on different coasts, I believe, because I'm on the East Coast, and if I'm not wrong, you're on the West Coast.
Yes, I'm in San Francisco.
Yeah, it'd be a tricky autograph for me to get, but we can work it out. Nothing is impossible, I think, but we can work it out, Devin. So apart from the creator of awesome t-shirts, you are more than that. So we are going to jump into that and what Dosu is more. It's not a clothing brand, even though by this point people would be allowed to think that it might be, and they would be wrong. So for those who may not know me, I'm Erica. And if you are joining live here, feel free to drop a hi in the comments, share where you are dialing in from or joining live from. We are really excited to be having you here. It's so exciting that you're able to join us live and be watching. So please drop a hi in the comments. But yeah, my name is Erica Hughberg and I work at Tetrate, and really excited to be enabling people to build awesome AI solutions. And I'm really excited to have cool people like Devin to have conversations because Devin actually has built a really cool solution called Dosu that actually has really cool AI features in them. And that is why I want to have this conversation with Devin. But first of all, who's Devin and what is Dosu? So Devin, tell us a bit more about you and how did you get into building things and Dosu in particular?
Well, thanks again for having me, Erica. Very excited to be here. I'm Devin Stein, the founder of Dosu. But in terms of background, I'm an engineer by trade. And so I started off in bigger tech, and then I've been in startups now for 7, 8 years. And I got into building things. If we go way back, like how did I end up, I guess as an engineer. And I think I followed a similar trajectory to many people, which is I love video games. And so the natural progression when I was younger was like, okay, could I build a video game? And then I tried to build a video game and quickly realized that I don't really like building video games and like playing them. But coding was really fun. And so that got me into like software engineering. And I was always I really loved the powers. Like coding is a superpower. Like you can have ideas and actually build them. And that I felt like has always motivated me. It's like having this ability to say like, oh, I want to bring an idea like Dosu into the world, and I actually have the tools to do that myself, and sort of will it into existence. I've always found that fascinating, about software engineering and just building generally. Outside of Dosu, I also really like open source. I think one of the you know uh, best ways to build is like building with something that other people use, right? It's like, why build something if
Yeah.
it's only for yourself? And so I got really into open source, I don't know, I guess a while ago now, when I was working in the Kubernetes ecosystem, um, because I had a problem, and then I saw
Yeah.
it was with an open source dependency, and I was like, okay, well, if I have this problem, other people probably do too, and started contributing and maintaining from there.
So I do really, really relate to what you were saying about coding and software development being this ability to create something. I always see coding as a creative exercise. And this idea that software engineering is something so logical and far away from creativity, I don't think so. I think it's creativity and artistry and software engineering are so close together. And it's about creating things. So I really, really relate to that. And open source, could you tell me a little bit more about how you feel that Dosu and open source and your experience with Dosu open source is related to your inspiration for creating Dosu?
Yeah, yeah, and I completely agree about, software engineers' creativity. I could talk at length about that.
Yeah.
Uh, but a lot of kind of what inspired me to build Dosu and is both in my career and as like an engineer and an engineering leader, I was always the shortest path for information about like how does our product actually work.
Yeah.
Whether it was engineers on different teams trying to understand a feature so they could change it or add functionality to it, or it was someone on the product team trying to understand like the implementation details of a feature if it matches their interpretation, because a lot of decisions of how something's actually implemented go into like are up to the engineer as they're building it.
Yeah.
And then especially and there's drift over time where maybe a bug's fixed and you accidentally change an implementation or intentionally have to change an implementation to fix a bug. And a lot of that context is lost. And so
Yeah.
I was always the person that people pinged when they wanted to know, like, how do things actually work?
Yeah.
And this was true at my job, but also happened to me in open source, where I
Okay.
started first as a contributor to some open source projects. I then became a maintainer of an existing open source
Mm.
project called Spark Magic that had a fairly large community, and then started a project of my own that gained
Okay.
a good amount of traction called Customized Stops in like the GitOps community. And as an open source maintainer, I found myself in the exact same position I was internally, but even like at a greater scale, because I was working at
Yeah.
companies that were like 30, 40 people. But in open source, I now had tens of thousands of people that depended on me for information.
Mm.
And they also were trying to understand, like, hey, how does this library actually work? I tried to find documentation, but like I want to know like the nitty gritty. Um,
Yeah.
and and so people would ping me at all hours of the day, asking
Yeah.
questions about, hey, like, does this support my use case? Am I able to do this thing with
Is it
this
the right thing
library?
to do?
Yeah, is it the right thing to do? Has this been discussed before? Like, oh, I'm running into this issue. Like, is it a known issue? Is this actually intentional? Or is this
Mm.
something that someone's working on fixing it
Like,
already?
yeah, is it a bug or is it a feature?
Yeah. Yeah, and like a lot of that context was just, in my head, either at my company or in open source, because I had the context about basically everything that would happen around the project. I was a part of most conversations happening on GitHub issues or in
Mm.
Slack. I was aware of all the PRs that were open, the discussions had on PRs, what code actually was merged and changed. And as a result, I was always like the uniquely positioned to answer these questions or help out.
Yeah.
And I also enjoyed this role. And so I was fortunate in that at my last company I was at, we were also working in the machine learning space. Um,
Okay.
and I had early access to GPT-3 through another
Okay.
person's company. And so I started, building on top of LLMs in my spare time. At that time, it was pre-ChatGPT, and the main thing you do was fine-tune models. So I was fine-tuning models for various use cases for side projects I had.
Okay.
And I was also a very early adopter of GitHub Copilot. And I was, like w- there was a lot of talk about LLM's ability to generate code, but I felt this was almost 2.5 years ago now that there wasn't enough people thinking about like, well, what else do developers do in their time other than coding? And
Mm.
for me, the main place I spent time was one, understanding code, But then two
Yeah.
was, I think, even more importantly, was sharing that understanding, right?
Yeah.
And so sharing that with other people at the company or in the open source world with my community. And so I started Dosu to tackle that problem. It's like, can we make
Yeah.
engineering knowledge more broadly accessible?
I think that is really interesting, especially when you talk about what is it that engineers do that isn't writing code. Because as you say, we spend so much time understanding code, and the amount of times in our careers that we have been dropped into these huge code bases and trying to understand what's going on, whether that is a proprietary code base or whether that is an open source code base, right? And you're like, I have no idea what's going on. And if it's a proprietary one, the people who wrote it may not even work there anymore. And that can be very overwhelming, and it can take a really long time to figure it out and piece it together. Yes, actually, sometimes it can be kind of fun, right? When you are trying to work that out. And as I think you also said, there is this part of actually when you have figured it out and you have built this mental model and you are having this really great understanding of a system, because it's not just code, it's a system, right? How everything hangs together. It can be really nice because you can enable and accelerate all of these other people who are building on it. And it can be wonderfully rewarding. And being someone who really loves platform engineering, I have really loved also being in that position, like helping other people, because there's something really lovely when you're able to help someone, right? And you see them go off and do even more wonderful things. So it is it's lovely, right? It's so nice to help people.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And I think you also described the problem really, really well, where, at the end of the day, you still have to understand the code. And right now, the ways to do that is maybe ask the person who wrote it, but maybe they're not there anymore. And so then you have to go on this journey of like, okay, figuring things out. But right now, oftentimes when engineers do figure it out, then they don't usually write that down because they know that that information either is going to go stale immediately because they're going to write something down and the
it's
code's going to change,
boring.
and it's
It's very
boring.
boring.
You have to like leave your IDE. You have to like, I know for me at least, I love to code. I'm happy to code all day. Writing there's a lot of activation energy that gets me to write a long document. And so, whenever like on the product side, like something we always think about those is like, how do we just bring the sort of activation energy or friction to saving your knowledge as an engineer, as the domain expert, back to a knowledge base as easy as possible. Because then you're able to capture human intent, which is like the most important thing at the end of the day. Is like, how do you capture these sort of connections and subtleties that humans learn as they build something?
Yeah, I do wonder though if anyone who of the people listening in live, if they do love writing things down, they are very welcome to comment and say that they are. Or if you find it equally boring as I do, you're allowed to say that too. And if you have any tips for, making it fun, you can share that too. But Devin, do you have tips for making it more fun to document things? Or maybe your
I
tip
mean,
is Dosu.
my tip would be Dosu, but I think like how we think about it, and I actually think is both conducive to kind of where documentation and knowledge is going and is good for LLMs, is doing it in bite-sized pieces, right? Like I think the hardest part of writing a like longer form document is like it takes a lot of time to like organize all of that information. When really like you usually have like a few ideas at a moment that you just want to save somewhere. And I
Yeah.
think the hard part today is like, okay, like, well, is there a doc that already exists for this? Like, where does that live? How do I update it correctly? If there's not, do I have to start one? And what we're trying to do is just abstract that all away and say, hey, I just want to save this information and you figure out where it should live and then make sure it stays up to date. Because that's the other part is like, even if you love writing docs today, it's almost actually, I would say, impossible to enforce it team wide to make sure those docs stay up to date, especially for internal knowledge. because there's not always a person dedicated to internal knowledge maintenance or writing even.
Yeah, I do want, however, I will want to ask you what it really takes to solve real user problems with AI-powered features. I do have a feature request, though, in general, for anyone who wants to build it. I know this is going to sound impossible, but I always wanted someone to just download what's in my head and like insert it into other people's heads. I think that would be great. I'm not sure that is possible, but I think we are getting closer. So I just feel like we are getting there. And I hope that one day I can just think instead of type. And then I can just like transfer it somehow. But you call me, Devin, when you fix that, and I'll be happy. Not expecting it tomorrow, but you just let me know. So, but where we are today, what does it take to solve real user problems that
I,
have
I,
AI-powered features?
I would love to be able to download another person's, brain like that or
Like their
information.
understanding, like if
Yeah.
I'd be like, I have this understanding of like a system and just like download it.
It's a bit of an aside, but I actually do think that's a really interesting aspect of AI that's under discussed is that there's still the human needs to figure it out. Like even if AI understands it and it's all kind of like in the AI's knowledge, like the human still has to go through the process of learning that. And I think there's a lot of opportunities to how do you help people learn faster with AI, not just get the information.
Yeah.
But in terms of what it takes to solve real user problems, I
Yeah.
mean, I'll speak to what things that we have, I guess, learned building Dosu,
Yeah.
and one I think the kind of common thing I'll start with is, with AI generally, it's very easy to get something. It's very hard to get something that works really, really well and reliably.
Mm,
Because you can do, and this is true like with vibe coding and just prompting in general, you can get to
mm.
80% pretty quick. But the last 20% is really, really hard. And I'll give an example in like our domain where we're
Okay.
helping teams maintain and generate knowledge, and some people like already using like Claude Code or Cursor to help generate docs, right? And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I can generate docs with AI. Like, why would I need a product like Dosu? And I think, but the where that's like kind of that classic 80-20 gap where it's like, oh, it's easy to generate a doc.
Mm,
Is it easy to enforce documentation generation practices across everyone on your team? Okay, like maybe that's a little harder. And
mm.
then it's like, okay, well, how do you actually enforce that with every change that you're updating all of those documents?
Yeah.
And then how do you also make sure that you're actually not creating duplicate knowledge and that it's like consistent across many docs where people aren't then having to look in more places. And so
And
uh,
contradictory information.
Exactly, exactly. Because if you're generating more information and more code, then it's going to be even harder to maintain and sift through. And so I think that's like an example of where it's you can do something with AI, but to make it a kind of a like sort of like the difference between doing something AI, sort of like the AI
Mm,
version, and like having it feel more AI native workflow, like as like this is actually the new way we think about documentation internally
yeah.
is a huge, huge gap. And another part of that I think is like a sort of insight and learning is what it's really, really important to meet developers and users like where they are today. I think there's been because chatbots have become so ubiquitous, there's now like so many different places you can go and ask for information.
Yeah.
But what, people like want is to have sort of AI adoption feel like it just makes their workflow better. I think
Yeah.
that's an example of why. like coding AI coding IDEs like Cursor did really well because like you already have an IDE, and now you have like an IDE that also like is
It's where you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly, and I think code reviews is another good example of that. Like, like something that really helped us at Dosu was bringing sort of this knowledge review to pull requests, where someone opens a PR and then we're analyzing that PR, reviewing that PR with respect to your knowledge base, because the friction to adopting that is like close to zero, right? It's like you already, if you have good developer practice internally, like you're already making pull requests, and
Yeah.
so then to have a new reviewer on those pull requests that's looking at that code change respect to your
Yeah.
knowledge is very, very frictionless and like part of your workflow already. It's just
Oh,
like I'm doing what I'm doing, but now it's like I'm also automatically updating docs. And so that sort of feeling of like I don't have to change my workflow, but things get better, I think is really, really
yeah.
important.
I agree with you. Like, meet people where they are, not pulling them out of their existing routines. Like, integrate into where people are, because changing behavior patterns is really tricky. And what I'm really curious about as well is, when I look at all of the changes that are happening in this AI space, there are new models being launched all the time. And it almost feels like we are being told we have to buy better models to get better results. And I'm personally starting to wonder, do we need more expensive models all the time to create better results? Or do we have to be smarter in how we are using them to create better results? Does bigger always mean better, or does newer always mean better? And do we have to use is it one model to rule them all? How are you approaching this space? Are you using many different models? Are you using, and I'm also really into embeddings lately and content. So, but please tell me a bit more about how you are approaching all of this space when it comes to like trying to handle all the things that are happening.
Man, it's impossible to keep up in this space. I'll maybe start with that in terms of the pace
Yeah.
of model development, new models being released. And I think that's something that is interesting that I would have said is true a year ago, and I think is still true today, that if you froze model development, so you say, hey, we're not getting another foundational language model for another year, maybe even 2 years, I think there's so much room to build product around the models given existing capabilities, that um, that yeah, like I don't think it would. There's just so much more for us to unlock on like basically meeting developers where they are or users where they are, from a feature perspective and like creativity on the product side, that I don't think newer always means better. With that said, what we have been seeing though is newer models and larger models unlock use cases in very unexpected ways. And I think that's like something that we've, you know, had an interesting view on too when building Dosu, was that when I started the company, I was always like our entire agent, like we had a very like early deep research agent that would help with
Okay.
GitHub issue triage. And I had a lot of complex logic um, uh, managing a 4K context window, because everything basically had to fit within 4K, and that really meant
Okay.
like 2K with some buffer, and that's a tiny amount of information relative to the million or 400,000 context windows you have today. And once we had
Which
more
is
context, yeah,
tricky because you're
yeah,
dealing with code and documentation. It's
exactly. And so we had
hard.
these really kind of thoughtful workflows that we built out, like what is the right way to like compress all this information to get to a final answer or result for someone. And now with both larger context windows, a lot of that is easier because you can look at entire documents instead of just little snippets and then
Mm,
expanding them. Uh, and then two is the sort of tool use loop, kind of quote unquote agents,
mm,
has really made it so products can be a lot more flexible in terms of what they do. Whereas like, when I started Dosu, the models were not good enough where we had to be very opinionated about what is like the best way to maybe triage a GitHub issue and like all the tools and workflow that it should go through. Whereas
mm.
now, because models have gotten so much better at just general tool use, your product can be a lot more flexible, and actually that unlocks a lot of user creativity about like, given the tools that the model has access to, like how do they want to use it?
Mm,
And so that's something even we've been sort of also like working towards, is removing some of the rigidity we have in the product and the agent today, because kind of the newer models have unlocked that ability to be um, you know give users a bit more flexibility in terms of they can customize it honestly to like what they need a little bit more, which I think is really
yeah.
interesting.
So, what do you think then is happening next? And okay, so that's been just happening. What you just described though, this evolution of the tool usage and this flexibility, if I'm right, if I follow this space correctly, that evolution has actually just happened in the last, not even 12 months. It's happened in the less, it's just really exploded in the last 6 months. And where it's become really mainstream and easy to use, because I hadn't really started using some of those things until this summer, like the end of the summer.
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
through my mind here. It wasn't until the end of the
It,
summer where I started experimenting with that myself. And I'm not going to say I'm an early adopter. So last 6 months, it's
yeah,
been
it's that's what it
happening.
is. It's changed very fast. I would say like February of this year is when it started to seem like, oh, actually, especially on the Anthropic model side,
Mm,
they're getting a lot better at this. But it wasn't really until the summer where it went from they're getting better to like, actually, this is the better way to use these models.
yeah,
And that's like the interesting dynamic too between I guess AI application builders and product builders like Dosu versus the foundational model companies, is the
yeah,
way that they are training their models also influence how we should build our products to take advantage of that sort of
yeah.
training process.
And then it goes through the cycle all the way to then making ways to think about building products and making that available to people who are maybe more end user focused and application builders rather than machine learning or AI experts who are maybe more just adopters of these ways of building, right? So that's really fascinating. Okay, but what is exciting you next though? So that has been the latest evolution over this past year. So for Dosu, what do you think is on the horizon? What excites you next? What do you think is going to unlock the next phase of
So
features that are going to solve problems for users?
so I think I'll answer this a few ways, I guess. So one we already talked about, but really is like meeting developers where they are. And that like when I think about the future of knowledge, um, we really want it to be, documentation's always been something that you sort of have to go and look for. But now with AI, we're getting to this place where we want to build it where knowledge sort of finds you while you're working on a
Okay.
task. And so what that
Oh, I
means
love
for
that.
developers could be, I already talked about it a little bit, is like on pull requests, right? It's like servicing
Mm,
knowledge that would be useful on that PR. Maybe it's like a document that someone wrote 3 years ago about best practices for this specific type of feature pattern or something like that, or a mistake someone made, 3 years ago that you don't want to repeat on this PR because it wasn't documented
mm,
well at the time. But then the other side of it is like really in your IDEs. So as you're building, like we want Dosu to be the best way to get knowledge to not just you as a developer, but also to your agent or coding agents,
mm,
because LLMs are only as good as the information they have access to, and so can we be, help provide the right context, and curate the right context and provide at the right time for these coding agents. And a similar part of that is, LLMs have gotten really good at this tool use problem, and so now you have coding agents that are writing more and more code. And there's now this interesting opportunity or kind of workflow happening where it's not just developers that need to document, but also coding agents. Because some features are, built, 80, 90, or 100% through AI. But there might be interactions that happen between the human and the agent, or just the agent makes a decision along the way that should be captured as knowledge. And so how do we provide not just tools for reading knowledge, but sort of rethink what it means to write knowledge as you build something, whether it's a human or an agent, as you're developing.
I really like this idea. And also imagine that I'm a software engineer and I'm just creating I'm got an issue assigned. I'm creating my branch and my fork to work on this issue, and I can get all this help to help me do a good job. That would be pretty cool, right? That would be amazing. And then, even if I raise a PR for the work and then even get a loop of feedback and I can, and then hook into other tools that are helping me work, that would be really cool. I also have a question then, Devin, because whether it's for that type of workflow or even just in general, and if you're happy to share, there's a lot of information you're handling in Dosu in general, and you are leveraging AI. If you're comfortable to share, what kind of infrastructure and platform are you powering Dosu with? Are you like hacking it all together on like a cloud with Kubernetes and self-hosting everything yourself? Are you relying on some cool model serving like AWS Bedrock, Vertex from GCP? Or you hooking into like Anthropic or OpenAI directly? Or I'm just curious are you leveraging a bunch of hosted stuff or open source models? Just kind of curious which route, or you gone a whole mix of options. How
That's a
you
good
approach
question.
this architecturally?
I'm happy to share. I mean, I can go into a lot of
Yeah.
detail.
Okay. Yeah.
Very relatively transparent about kind of like how we build Dosu.
Yeah.
But at a high level, like the way we think about it is we are a product company. And so models are a means to us like delivering a good product experience to users. And so we'll use whatever model will get us there. Typically, and like currently, that is using hosted models on a variety of different platforms. We've used Vertex, AWS Bedrock, Azure, OpenAI, Anthropic, kind of you name it. We've kind of are using or have used most hosted model providers, because that's not our core competency is hosting our own models. And there's also a lot of great hosters for open source models as well. And so on the hosting side, we generally use model APIs. And then on the infrastructure side, it's kind of funny because I came from a Kubernetes background. It's honestly how I got into open source. But we're a small team, and I've seen the complexities of managing Kubernetes as a small team, especially when I'm probably the most kind of like infrastructure person on the team still. And so what we've actually done so far is we have a kind of mono repo, sort of monolith esque pattern internally, and it's all on Cloud Run as like our kind of compute platform, and it's been treating us well so far.
And that's pretty straightforward because as far as I understand with Cloud Run, you can even like scale down to 0 pretty much. And
Yeah.
nothing's happening. You can be offline.
Right. Yeah.
So,
The built-in auto scaling is pretty solid. It can scale to 0. And then a tool we've been talking a lot about recently is DBOS, on the kind of more workflow orchestration and concurrency side. That's been a useful tool for us. That's also open source.
That's pretty interesting. But yeah, so I'm really curious when people are like, especially when people are building smaller companies, like when they're starting out, not building smaller companies. Hopefully they're building big companies, but they're starting small, right? Because it'd be hard to start big, right? So you're starting somewhere. And especially, someone like me, who many of us do, we start in an enterprise, we come out of university and we start our career in enterprise where everything's big. And so with that, like, what is your advice for people starting in today's landscape? And imagine you were starting Dosu from scratch today with everything that's available, because you did say things did change a bit from the day you started Dosu till today. So if you were starting today, what advice would you give yourself? Because obviously the context windows did change, so you probably would do things slightly differently on November 20th, 2025.
I would say similar to what I've been saying, like one of the kind of most interesting things that's only happening like the past few months, and I think we still have years to come to see this actually play out, is agents are becoming an interface for getting things done, and especially in the workplace setting. And this is most true right now within the coding domain, but it's becoming true of a lot of different types of knowledge work where the work itself is actually being mostly executed by an agent, and then it's being orchestrated and by humans, basically who decide what should be worked on and then helping correct it. And when you have agents doing more work, I think there's really interesting opportunities for what does it look like to for those agents to do some of the things that we know are important for the organization. And so an example that, I guess in Dosu's case is really about knowledge, right? Like what does knowledge maintenance writing look like in a world where agents are building most features, for example? And like Confluence might not be the right tool for agents to be writing to as they're building.
Yeah.
And so what does that look like? What does like Confluence built for AI and humans look like? And what is the right tools that they have? And I think, that's the opportunity that we're focused on. But I think there's
Interesting.
many, many, many similar opportunities where what is like sort of like the infrastructure that those agents need to do their job, but also make that information interpretable to like other people at the organization. I think there's a lot of kind of unique things about building for agents because
Yeah.
they can be sort of power users of tools, right? Like like humans maybe are going to use like are never going to read like the man page or like the manual for every tool,
Yeah.
but an agent can be a power user from day one. And so I think the shapes of products and tools that we build in the future where AIs are like a primary consumer or user of those look a little different.
Do you think people in the future will be able to, or even now, can people today build their own solutions on top of Dosu? Do you have APIs that people can build solutions on top of Dosu? Like if you were a Dosu customer, could you build a solution on top of Dosu?
Currently, no, we're much more read than write. But it's something we're very, very interested in is like, what does the sort of write version of Dosu look like where maybe you want to build your own workflow where you're saving knowledge and we're helping maintain it. Like, what does that process look like? Sort
Yeah.
of the knowledge infrastructure layer is very top of mind for us.
Yeah. So I was just like so curious, like what could that look like? And we are sort of up on time, and I had so many more questions. I feel like there was 100 more questions I could ask because I think it's really interesting, because knowledge and sharing knowledge is so hard as an engineer. And I want to say that something that I've been doing, because I've been playing around with Dosu as part of the Envoy project and specifically Envoy AI Gateway. And I have tried this thing where we have code, right? And I don't know if this is the right way of using Dosu, Devin, but I did this thing where I was able to generate a doc from the code. Like there was no, I don't know, am I doing this right? I was able to actually generate like information about how something worked straight from the code with Dosu. And that was pretty cool because and it was written in like, this is how you use it, like this is how you use this feature. And I think that was really nice because there's a lot of smart people writing really cool features. And when you have rapid development into an open source project and then being able to share with people how to actually use it, it can be really, really hard. And by the way, is that what you're supposed to do, Devin?
Yeah, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we didn't even get into like, why documentation or knowledge generally, but at the end of the day, it's like documentation has always been a knowledge cache, right, for people, where it's like someone who built something or is an expert kind of writes down their thoughts in a way that's easy to understand and for someone to read through so that they don't have to go through the same work to get to the same conclusion in the future. And I think
Yeah.
it's true for LLMs in the future as well, as having
Mm.
things in a written format that helps aggregate a bunch of work is a knowledge cache for other people and also agents where they don't have to do the same reasoning because it's been done for them and it's been kept up to date, so it's reliable.
I love that. It's not just for humans, but also for agents and LLMs. It's a knowledge cache that helps LLMs and agents to know. Oh, I love that. That's amazing. So Dosu can become this cache, a knowledge cache for both agents and humans. And I wanted to share with people some links. Obviously, here is a link for Dosu, Dosu.dev, if you want to check it out. And it's really fun to see what kind of documentation you can get. And also you can, as Devin said, you can actually integrate it into your GitHub workflow. I used to really hate labeling all my issues in GitHub, and Dosu helps me with that. By the way, I have no association more with Dosu more than that I've got introduced to Devin and I have coerced Devin into being on this live stream with me. Thank you, Devin, for being here. I really appreciate it. I am not paying Devin to be here. So thank you, Devin. I got a t-shirt. Look, I'm getting stuff out of this. So anyway, I am really enjoying that I no longer have to manually label all of the issues. I'm really grateful. Funnily, that has been more painful, I think, sometimes than the documentation. Sorry, that's like that admin pain.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate it. And then if you want to get to know Devin, here's his LinkedIn, and you can hopefully get to know him if he accepts your connect request. I don't know. If you look nice, he might accept it. I'm sure you are nice. And do you accept people who don't look nice? I'm sure you do, Devin. They don't have to look nice. Devin's nice, so I'm sure he will hang out with you, and he will for sure help you out with getting Dosu up and running. I think he will for sure do that. But yeah, anything you want to say to people who may want to connect with you, Devin, on the internet?
No, I mean, please reach out. LinkedIn, Twitter. I think we're Dosu_AI, and then join our Discord. If you're interested in sort of building the future of knowledge for engineering teams, like join our Discord, hop in discussions that are going on there. And then if you want help getting started with Dosu, just reach out. hi@Dosu.dev, and someone, whether it's me or someone on our team, will be in touch. So
yeah, if you want to find the Discord, there's a link to Dosu.dev again. There's a link to the Discord on there. That's how you get in. And if you want to connect with me, Erica, this is my LinkedIn. And I said I work at Tetrate. And if you want to get access to a bunch of different models via Anthropic, OpenAI, XAI, other open source models, you can get to the Tetrate Agent Router service and you get $5 free. That's what I need to say. No, I don't need to say. But I'm really grateful for Tetrate allowing me to do this live stream. So you can get $5 credit to try that out and try and build some cool solutions. So thank you for tuning in to this live stream, and we'll see you next time. Next time is next week on Tuesday, and we won't do one on Thursday because it's Thanksgiving. But thank you, everyone, and have a good rest of your week.